Estamos de vuelta en el Centro de Cultura Contemporánea de Barcelona y en esta sesión vamos a hablar de la ciudad, de la forma de la ciudad y del futuro de las ciudades. Ha sido una sesión realizada en colaboración con STARTS, el programa Science and Technology and the Arts de la Unión Europea, y estoy encantado de dejaros con el conductor de esta sesión, Manuel Cirauqui, director de Idea y comisario del Guggenheim de Bilbao. Gracias, Manuel.
Gracias. Hablar en inglés a partir de ahora. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Very happy to be here. And I want to thank Ars Electronica and STARTS for putting together this great event. STARTS, as you heard, is an initiative of the European Commission to promote intersections between science, technology, and the arts. And as a curator, I am very happy to collaborate with STARTS in such projects as the exhibition Near Futures Quasi-Worlds that took place in Berlin this past summer. Alongside more projects and other interventions in the near future, I am also grateful to Sónar+D, CCCB, for organizing this amazing festival. As director of Idea, I had the great privilege to work with the Sónar+D team in Metro Mudra, an experiment in urban semiotics for TMB, the transportation system of Barcelona. You can experience this project all over the city's subway system, as well as the bus, and also here at the entrance of the CCCB. Of course, I thank this wonderful institution for hosting us all during these 2 intense days. Our discussion this morning, in fact, will continue addressing the future of cities. So, without further ado, I will introduce our 3 guest speakers who will each address their current projects and interests, as well as connections between them and the possibility to reimagine the future of cities. So, our first speaker will be Andrea Ling, who is with us telematically. Hi, Andrea. I will give a short intro to what you do. Andrea Ling is an architect, artist, and researcher working at the intersection of design, fabrication, and biology. She was the 2019 Ginkgo Bioworks creative resident, and her project, Designed by Decay, Decay by Design, was awarded the 2020 International STARTS Prize. She's also the founding partner of the Toronto-based Art Collective Design Guild. Andrea, we will follow with your statement, so go right ahead.
Okay, all right. Can you hear me?
I think so.
All right, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for the invitation to be on this panel. So I wanted to talk about the design of intentional decay and its relationship to the city. So this is work that was started at the MIT Media Lab and that I continued during my residency at Ginkgo Bioworks. So during the residency, they asked how to design a world without waste. And so my response is to recognize that as an architect and designer, all I do is design waste or what will be waste. And if that's the case, I need to be intentional about it and perhaps design waste as nature does. So rather than seeing waste as the product breakdown where disposal is required, could we instead use waste as inputs for foundation or for renewal? In nature, biological decay is used as a way of transforming and reorganizing material rather than destroying it for disposal. So it's constructive as much as it is destructive. And through it, nature is able to design systems that endure by constantly renewing and through, rather than lasting through a static permanence. So for example, these rock paintings from Western Australia remain vivid despite being up to 70,000 years old. And that's because the original pigment made of plant and animal material were decomposed by communities of black fungus and red algae. And because of their symbiotic requirement, they stayed within the confines of the drawing for thousands of years and far longer than any man-made material system that we have. So then this project was a series of artifacts that exhibited design decay, using biological agents as ways of transforming material throughout an object's life cycle, not to destroy the object, but to reorganize it into different forms. So I was doing this work in collaboration with Ginkgo scientists and asking questions on things like species selection, species concentration, the type of precision, timelines, and scale that's currently possible both with and without their biotechnologies. Could you spatially and temporally guide where and when decay might occur? And if so, could you harness it as a fabrication technology? And then given that you're using autonomous biological organisms as the decay agents, can a designer accommodate agency and variation within her process, where sometimes the wild or the unexpected might result? So most of these objects were made out of biocomposites of chitin, cellulose, and pectin. These are the most abundant biopolymers on the planet, and they're derived from shrimp shells, tree pulp waste, and fruit skins. And so the project is broken up into 3 parts, each with a different type of agent as the decay mechanism. So enzymes, bacteria, or fungus. So the first agent, enzymes, they're derived from fungus and human saliva, and then we integrated them into these biocomposites with really crude spatial and temporal control. And the degradation that results, is tunable by varying enzyme concentration and the amount of time you keep the active enzyme in the material and which enzyme you used. So the results of these tests are here, and the enzyme degraded lines are of really poor resolution, despite being extremely precise in where and how I was applying them. They ended up diffusing through all these semi-wet colloids I was using. And so some of the more compelling results were some of the structures I made where I used enzymes to subtract holes or perimeter material, and where the imprecision was not as detrimental. In another set, I learned how to work with streptomyces, which is a family of bacteria, soil bacteria and secondary decomposers. And they produce these really vibrant pigments that can be used in sustainable textile production. So I was trying to culture the streptomyces onto my biocomposites. And in sterile conditions, I could get it to work on plain cellulose, but it was really, really hard to get any streptomyces growth on the biocomposites. I only got it to work a few times, and then only at a certain scale. So my original hope was that I could transform this cocoon structure I had made, and that as it decayed, it would change color to a deep indigo with time. And so what happened was this. I incubated parts of it for a month, and I resulted in this white mold that kind of overwhelmed all the streptomyces. And the final set of artifacts I made were made with different types of mold that were used to decay the objects in very spatially designed ways. So I was testing if I could guide where Aspergillus niger, which is a black mold, could grow, and see at what point overgrowth occurred and what conditions would encourage it to stay within the original pattern. And I was also co-culturing it with Trichoderma viridae, which is a green mold, onto these large wooden blocks that are computationally designed to have increased surface area. And what was interesting is, even though I plated the molds in different regions of the blocks, they end up commingling and coexisting. Oops. So what does this have to do with the future of cities? To answer that, I wanted to look at one of the first cities. So this is an image of Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk. And Uruk was one of the first cities founded about 4000 BC in what is modern-day Iraq. And so the king Gilgamesh convinces his friend, the savage Enkidu, to help him slay Humbaba, who's a monster that protects the sacred forest. So after they slay Humbaba, Enkidu and Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh actually cuts down a bunch of the sacred trees and builds a gate for his city walls. After a few more transgressions like this, the gods get angry, and as punishment to both of them, they kill Enkidu, even though Gilgamesh is the instigator of most of their crimes. And so when Enkidu's body starts to rot, Gilgamesh, who's really fearful of this natural reminder of mortality that sits in front of him, casts his friend's corpse outside of the city's walls and makes a statue of Enkidu inside the walls to immortalize his friend. So in the story, Gilgamesh is this really great city builder. He's terrified of his own mortality and what he can't control. And so he builds these giant walls around Uruk, separating culture from wild nature in the belief that he can build his way towards immortality if the statues are tall enough and if his walls are big and strong enough. And so he's considered the first great hero in literature. So 6,000 years later, this is what remains of Uruk. And we can kind of see that culture and civilization were enclosed within these 3 sets of walls, and uncontrollable nature, including all the monsters that guard it, and the processes of death and decay are outside. And so one of the legacies, I think, of Gilgamesh's attitude is found in the second image. So this is an aerial view of how many modern cities and suburbs develop today, with a really harsh transition between what we control and all the culture inside and what is feral outside. And so what happens when we build like this? This is what happens. This is the interface. And this interface where wilderness hits suburban or urban development, when it's so super hard and heavily demarcated, when we kind of reject these uncomfortable processes of decay and nature's other monsters, we end up accidentally deleting the processes of resilience and renewal that are paired with those monsters. So when I project into the future of cities, I'm asking what would happen if we let some of those monsters in? What would happen if we made the line between the built environment and the natural one intentionally more porous? Or, like the cave paintings, could we use the built environment as a degradable scaffold for the natural one, rather than the way that we've been doing it, where we mine the natural world and to build the urban one? And I don't really have an image of what this looks like, but I do think some of the principles from the project I was talking about are useful here, where when we embed decay and regeneration into the built environment, the process of making things becomes provisional and not just consumptive. Yeah, and so that's how I wanted to end. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Andrea. That was amazing. Mara Balestrini is our next speaker. Mara, thank you so much for being here physically and really. Mara Balestrini is a human-computer interaction expert and technology strategist. In addition to a number of successful independent projects, she is a partner and director of research at Ideas for Change, where she consults on innovation, citizen engagement, and participatory technology interventions for cities. And without further ado, we will hear Mara now. Thank you.
Based on my practice, there is huge potential in redesigning cities, so thinking of the future of cities, when we put together the 3 main concepts: collective intelligence, artificial intelligence, and environmental intelligence. And I'm just going to show today how I've evolved my thinking along these ideas, starting from collective intelligence. When I say collective intelligence, I talk about what we humans can do together. When we come together as a collective and we have a shared purpose, we see that in cities, in cities policymaking, for example, collective intelligence is being increasingly fostered to achieve better policies. In the case of my work, I see citizen science and citizen-generated data, because I'm a data person, I'm a technologist, as a form of city making, but also you may see other forms nowadays, for example, citizen assemblies. Macron in France is running citizen assemblies to discuss climate change. The same is being done in Scotland and in other cities around the world. So collective intelligence is increasingly becoming a force that is shaping our cities, bringing the bottom up and the expectations and needs of citizens to the top-down policies, and therefore shaping and scoping cities. Throughout my work, I started working with citizens on how we may produce data and act collectively to envision new data systems to harness the potential of technology to address matters of concern. For example, in this project that you see here, we were working in Bristol, in the UK, where many houses have a problem of damp, which is humidity in the houses. There were a number of smart city projects taking place in Bristol, but none of these projects were focusing on this issue of damp. However, people renting homes that had damp were suffering health problems and other issues like school absenteeism or other problems because of the impact of living with humidity at home. So working with communities, including all forms of collective intelligence, from children to technologists to designers, the community came up with this frog sensor that you can see there, which is a sensing device. It's an open source sensing device that allows people to collect data about damp at home and assess whether they have a problem of structural damp, which means that the landlord, the owner of the house, has to take care and it can seriously affect your health, or it's just moisture, which can be solved by opening the window when you shower or when you boil water for many, many cups of tea, as we were in the UK. So this type of systems really help people make sense of their environment and take collective action to solve problems that affect them. Another project that we did was here in Barcelona, in a square in Gracia, where people had been affected by noise pollution for many years, where we worked with communities living around this square to collect noise data. So the thing here was people had been enduring very, very high levels of noise due to late night drinking at the square. And for many years they had complained at the city council, but they had no data to prove that the levels of noise were above those admitted by the World Health Organization or even by the local policies. By deploying 25 noise sensors around the square in the balconies of the citizens, we were able to collect data that was governed and managed by the cities, and offer this to the city council as evidence of the struggles that they were enduring. This led to better collective decision-making, because they were able to propose, citizens were able to propose changes to the square and the protocols in the square so that the noise situation was alleviated. Now the problem is, we're talking about sustainability, about humidity, about noise, about temperature, and so on. And obviously, my aim, based on all the work that I've done around air quality, noise pollution, and so on, is to improve sustainability in the city. So my question here is, am I improving environmental sustainability as I am deploying more and more sensor technologies? Anybody who has worked with sensor technologies know that they don't last forever, that they become e-waste, digital and electronic waste. And so for me, that created a big problem, because it's a contradiction. For example, an electrochemical sensor for measuring gases, air quality, may last 6 months and then you have to replace it. So is this really sustainable? That took me to further thinking of how can we use non-human intelligence? What is out there in the city already sensing that we can build on, and that are more resilient systems for sensing? We started experimenting with using vegetables like cabbage for sensing acidity, for example, or soil, and how we may use more natural existing plant-based systems to sense environmental issues in the cities. And one of our latest interventions was to use strawberry plants as environmentally sustainable air quality monitoring stations. So along with a project called Vigilantes del Aire, which is being coordinated from Zaragoza, we deployed 5,000 strawberry plants across Spain. 1,000 plants were deployed here in Barcelona. Citizens were invited to sign up and come to our different stations to collect their strawberry plants. Strawberry plants were placed in people's balconies and stayed there for 3 months. See, particles in the air contain metallic elements. These particles land in the leaves, on the leaves of the plants. 3 months later, people would cut the leaves and put them in an envelope and send them to the office. Using magnetic technologies, we could magnetize the leaves and calculate the amount of metallic particles that had landed on the leaf. Taking into consideration the size of the leaf and the amount of particles in there, we could map out, and geolocating where that plant was, we could create a 3D map of pollution in the cities. This is a map of pollution in Barcelona, where red is very polluted and green is not so polluted. And compared to the rest of the 5 cities where we deployed strawberries, we were able to identify that Barcelona is one of the most polluted cities in the country. And these results correlate to existing air quality maps, showing that there is great potential for using plant-based systems, which are much more environmentally friendly, to sense the environment. Also, as someone who has worked for the last 10 years with sensing technologies and people, I can say that the level of engagement that I saw when people realized that they were able to measure the environment using strawberry plants was great, because you didn't need to know anything about technology. So we had a wide array of people willing to participate, from children to really old people, and engage in climate dialogues. The third element is artificial intelligence. We will see in the future of cities more and more intelligent agents and autonomous agents crawling around in their city and making decisions for us. One of the biggest concerns is, are these systems going to be used to control us or to make decisions that are unjust and unfair? Or can we harness the potential of artificial intelligence and connect it with plant intelligence and collective intelligence to augment human life and everybody's life in the context of the city and improve our environments? In my work right now, I'm dedicating some time to try to understand how can artificial intelligence help us make sense of data. This is very important, because sensing, whether you do it with plants or you do it with sensors, is about data. And a lot of people lack the skills to make sense of data. And we will have more and more data, and this data will be used to make very important decisions. So how can citizens participate by making sense of that data, in checking that the decisions are fair and participating in the process of decision making? So artificial intelligence can be used to help in the process of making sense of data and augmented human capabilities and extracting more knowledge from the data. And this is where I think the 3 elements together are incredibly promising when it comes to shaping the future of our cities. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mara. And I'm amazed by the time tracking we sort of intuitively display right here. Next is Joseph, who is also joining us from afar. Hi, Joseph. Welcome to the session. Joseph Klatt is a member of Precious Plastic, an open hardware plastic recycling project and an open source digital commons project. Precious Plastic originated in Eindhoven in 2013, and it received the FAMI Award in May 2018 to advance its development, which continues today through new versions and iterations. So I'm sure Joseph's going to tell us more details about these new iterations and versions and even other projects. So go right ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks to my fellow panelists. It's been interesting already. So my name's Joseph Klatt, and I'm from Precious Plastic, an open source community that's around tackling the plastic waste problem. Like Manuel said, we were started in 2013 by Dutch designer Dave Hackens. And today we've grown to a huge community around the world of thousands of people, makers, entrepreneurs, designers, waste pickers, really a big group of people who are focused on solving this problem. And if we think about, okay, what is the problem? We really boil it down to the fact that less than 10% of the plastic that's ever been produced has been recycled or recovered. That means that other 90% is still out there somewhere in the environment, either in landfills, burned in the air, floating in the ocean, or somewhere in the environment. And when you think about why this problem exists, we think it's due to the inaccessibility of the knowledge and tools surrounding plastic recycling. So much of the plastic recycling machinery looks just like this picture. It's large scale, centralized, capital intensive, and relies on proprietary technology. And this this is simply just inaccessible for much of the world, especially the developing world, which doesn't have access to such capital. And on the other hand, you have knowledge about how to work with plastic as a material that's quite difficult to find. And that has to do partly with the fact that plastic was a new invention, and it scaled very quickly to a mass production technique. And it didn't exist in that sort of craft, locally craftsman level to be developed. The knowledge surrounding how to work with this material did not have time to develop. So now it's really held in the hands of material scientists, production engineers, and those folks. So our solution at Precious Plastic is really a network of people who work together to tackle the plastic pollution problem on a daily basis. And that's from the people that are producing the plastic waste. It's from the machine builders who build our open source technology. It's from the product designers that design new products. It's from the people who produce these products. We really see it as a cohesive, resilient, and redundant network. So it all started really with these small scale plastic recycling machines. These are our first suite of machines that Dave developed about 7 years ago. And they were about developing them open source. They were accessible, so they were using accessible materials and components that can be found anywhere in the world. And they were then we explained how to build these machines with videos and online information, so people could build them themselves. So the machine on the far left is a shredder that takes plastic waste and shreds it into small granulate. And then the three machines on the right are production machines, so you can really make a new product. And this sort of technology just didn't really exist at this level. It was really only at this mass production level that you could find such technology. So this was kind of the first iteration of the project, and it was really kind of the backbone of where we are today. However, last year in 2019, we got together 100 people from around the world to really develop the next version of this machinery. And we knew in our community there was lots of hobbyists, makers, designers using our technology, but we really wanted to focus on how do we empower the entrepreneurs who can really push through a lot of this material that's still out there in the environment and really recycle it into new products. And that had to do with, we needed to design some bigger semi-industrial machines, we call them. They're still small scale, but they're really built to empower a small business. So we made a shredder and a bigger shredder, and then two bigger production machines, extrusion machine in the middle, and then a sheet press, which makes those beautiful looking plastic sheets on the right. So I'm from the umbrella organization of Precious Plastic, and we have all these independent organizations around the world that use our technology. And as the umbrella organization, we design these machines, and then we also design some products to kind of give examples of what people can do with these machines, and so they have something to make when they get started. And then we also open source and teach people how to do them. So here's some examples of furniture items that we've designed with our new machines. Here are some small functional objects, like something like a carabiner on the top, or on the bottom right, you see a light socket, so a small precise object, or even a light on the bottom left. And you can see the sort of quality of these products really tell the story of the material. And that's what Precious Plastic really is about. It's not just about recycling plastic. We know that we're not going to solve a problem. We're not going to recycle our way out of this problem. But it's about changing the mindset of how people view this material. So we want people to see value in it. We want people to see preciousness in it, and that's about making beautiful products to convince the consumer not to consume so much single-use plastic in the first place, and then the consumer who buys the product in the end to really value it for a long-term use. So we also designed some building materials like a brick and beams. And even a geodesic dome. The connector piece there is from one of our machines. And then we also do some more like artistic projects like this table that, again, conveys that message of preciousness of the material. Because when I think about the future of cities, I think the single-use plastic bottle is one of the most indicative items that tells the story of how cities are designed today. They're not just designed with longevity in mind, or they're incorrectly designed, as a plastic bottle is designed for thousands of years when it's really only used once. So I think the stories are connected about how we use plastic and how our cities are designed. So we also designed these digital platforms to connect our community, because it's not just about the machinery, it's not just about the products, but it's how do we connect and share experiences across the globe. So of course we have a website where people can find information about what we do and what products and machines they can build and make themselves. But we also make an academy where we document and detail all of our technology, mostly in YouTube videos that are very, very simple to understand and accessible. We made a map where people can say where they're located so people can connect locally. We made an event page where you can post events that you're doing surrounding precious plastic in your area. We also developed a platform for how-to guides. So let's say somebody in Russia develops a new product and they want to share how they've done that. They can do that through our platform, and then someone in Brazil can make that product. We also created a marketplace where people can buy and sell our machines, products, molds, and parts to really create an economic place for our community to connect and transact. And then we boiled these machines and products down into what we call starter kits, because there's kind of a learning curve when you get into this world of precious plastic and plastic recycling. And we wanted to make it accessible by putting it into a easily downloadable box that really described how to start one of these new precious plastic organizations. And we call this big world of precious plastic the precious plastic universe. So you have the people recycling plastic locally into new products, but then you have our global community that are connected through our digital platform. And this whole community that's across the globe is working together to solve a problem. And that's what makes up the universe. And like I said before, so we develop everything open source and publish it online for free. And this is really the cornerstone of who we are at Precious Plastic in the way that we design our solutions. And this is what has helped us create this huge community around the world of people recycling plastic and trying to create a different view of plastic as material. And this has led to thousands of people using our machines, hundreds of organizations. These are just some examples from around the globe. People have designed their own machines based on our drawings, created their own products, of course, really telling the story of recycling and beautiful products, and created this big movement of global change. So people looking for the solution together, developing their own local solutions, but then coordinating to accelerate development and research towards the end goal of solving this plastic pollution problem. So thank you very much, and I look forward to the discussion.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Joseph. And this is so inspiring and provoking. I'm already thinking of some of the products you showed and the strategies to do a bunch of things with them. I will just throw a couple of remarks, and I'll try to open up the discussion for all of you and all of us. I wanted to take on one thing that you mentioned, Joseph. You pointed out at pollution as a result of a coherent network. You used that word, and it struck me because that coherent network is actually a form of collective intelligence, but it's leading to disaster. It's just like the wrong kind of collective intelligence. It's called human intelligence, or isolationist human intelligence, right? And by hearing Mara, we understood how well we could work collaboratively with other species in this like non-isolationist logic for collective intelligence to be really collective. And of course, I connected that with Andrea's presentation because our model for collective intelligence is found in the world of bacteria and invertebrate creatures and fungi. So my first question to you, which is kind of like slightly a variation on when we discussed in preparations for this talk, is is the idea of the city sustainable with this perspective of isolationism and extractivism, or can we think that we will need to go through some sort of opening up or like breaking those boundaries between the rural, the countryside, the natural reservation, and the city, for the city to be precisely the stage for interspecies collaboration, collective intelligence, and a sustainability that leads those who will read our stories like Gilgamesh to find some sort of inspiration and not total depression. So that'll be my question for all of you to discuss, and let's see if we have time for more later. Wants to, Mara?
Yes, I can go. I think that what we are seeing in the world is a result of misunderstanding of how complexity works, really. And as we move into the future and we move into more and more complex problems, which are wicked in nature, we need to have a much more holistic approach to enable to think of solutions. So a wicked problem is characterized by having too many variables which you cannot control or known a priori, which means that you can, following the classic rational scientific method, makes it really difficult to tackle the problem because you may deploy a solution that brings more unwanted ramifications, and therefore you, by seeking a solution, you ended up creating a bigger problem. And I think that we're seeing this with climate change, for example, but in a lot of other spaces. The way in which we can tackle wicked problems is by embracing experimentation and interdisciplinarity and understanding that our objective needs to be not to reach a final perfect solution, but rather improve the current state into a better state, which means that you need to assume that change is the only constant, and you need to embrace much more experimental methods and live in peace with the idea that this constant experimentation will lead to furthering knowledge. And being holistic and interdisciplinary is probably the only approach that I can think of.
Yeah, I totally agree. And when I think about this experimentation, I think what better way than experimenting together globally? Because there's only so much that one organization can do. And when you're thinking about these wicked problems of whether it's plastic pollution, climate change, pandemic, we need a myriad of solutions, and we need to share those solutions quickly so that we can iterate faster and get to that solution faster. So I think that's one of the models that we try to incorporate at Precious Plastic. We know that us as the umbrella organization do not have the answer. We want to help create a space for others to create the answer together.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. I mean, I think when we see what's happening in the world right now, we kind of recognize that we're all networked, right? And so there is no wall around us. And so it's like, it's all one ecosystem. And it's not to say that this means that we have to develop cities and countryside in the same way, and that it would be like a homogeneous looking development. But it's to say that even in urban situations, you still have to accommodate the uncontrollable and the wild. Those processes have to be accommodated for and designed for and allowed for. And they might not take the same amount of space or appear in the same manner or form as they do in the rural environment, but they still have to be there.
And well, I really love the idea that experimentation will need to be a driving force. And I have the feeling that experimentation is not really the poetic motor of cities right now. It's actually consumption, it's overconsumption. And so thinking about the need for experimentation on all those levels, from fabrication, policy making, to even culture, we will we will sort of have a poetic task. We will need to change the narratives and the sort of like and the passions and the things that inspire people to do things, not just to ever consume. Right now, pretty much everybody's inspired to consume. And even if it's just for consuming computation, which, you know, sounds green, but it's not. So if we have to change the entire narrative of cities and veer toward experimentation so that we leave our Gilgamesh to the, you know, next thousands of years based on experimentation and the poetic of experimentation, how do you think we can do that in the current scenario of cities? Are cities sustainable for that? Or do we have to face them as sheer overconsumption machines? I mean, like, is it utopian to think we can change the entire way cities feel and are driven to do stuff besides drinking beers and, you know, and buying clothes? Or can we move forward with the same idea of the city? I mean, I know it's not a simple question.
I think that COVID has shown that we need experimentation and that we didn't have all the answers. And one of among the terrible things that we have faced because of these pandemics, one of the positive things is that people have begun to experiment how they can be more self-sustainable, how they can collaborate with others to help more, and people have a broader understanding that we need to collectively tackle complex problems. And I think that this is our opportunity to change the way cities work. If policymakers don't see what's happened, then we'll have to join together and make them see that this is the moment to transform how these things work.
I think also it's about creating the spaces and the situations within cities for that experimentation to happen. I think, yeah, at the current state of cities, there's not a flexibility. There is a rigidity built into the policy. You know, anyone who's tried to change something at the city level knows the bureaucratic structures and the just length of time it takes to get something done. But I think, yeah, like Mara said, the pandemic has shown us, you know, we don't have the time. We need to act quickly and be able to iterate quickly. So I think it's about creating those spaces, whether it's Fab Labs, citizen science shops. We need to create those spaces for that to happen, that experimentation to happen.
Right, and I think really, I think what COVID has taught us, I think a lot of people in the world are realizing how little they need to consume to be happy. Mm-hmm. Like, no one is shopping for clothes anymore. People aren't going out to restaurants. And, you know, for some people, this has been really, you know, really struggle, but for a lot of people, it's been okay. Like, I know for me, I haven't gone shopping in like a year, right? So, and it's fine. Like, and so to kind of re-examine some of our inherent attitudes towards consumption, and also the design attitudes behind that, things like human-centered design practices, which has led to things like the plastic bottle, which is extremely convenient and easy to use and makes things quicker, I guess. But it comes at this terrible, terrible cost that has been invisible so far, and now, you know, the cost is coming up, right? So with climate change.
Excellent, thank you all. I think we don't have time for more. This has been amazing, brief but amazing, and I hope it will leave a lasting and inspiring trace in all of us. Thank you, José Luis.
Thank you so much, Manuel, for running this amazing conversation. Thank you, Andrea, Joseph, and Mara. Sónar+D continúa, Sónar+D continúa.